So, when you're expecting a new hire, you of course anticipate and hope that they will show up for their first day. Well, HR knows that this often isn't the case. So, what happens when a new hire doesn't show up? SHRM Senior Director Amber Clayton and I will be touching on that in today's segment on how to backfill a position quickly when a ghost occurs. Let's get right into it.
To backfilling the position. This is employers need to think about this regardless of the ghosting or not, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Have a few candidates that your final candidates that you can interview just in case someone decides to pull themselves out of the process. I would say have a pool of candidates. It's always good to be able to continue sourcing candidates because you just don't know when people are ready to retire, to leave employment, maybe they're to not show up for the job or to accept the job and then decide they don't want the job. So I think it's important for employers to not just stop at the process or not just interview one person, but make sure that they have a pool of candidates for the position just in case these things happen.
Absolutely. This it perfectly feeds me into this slide on strategies and the top 5 reasons a new hire goes. And my question for you is, what strategies do you actually recommend HR to quickly identify and address an absence at the end of the day, kind of taking in these top 5 reasons that new hires ghost?
Well, I think your mismatched job roles here is a really good one because there are times when employers will post a position online, but the position isn't detailed the way that it really is. So oftentimes what happens is people are looking at these job ads, they go and they talk to the individual or they have a phone screen with the individual, and what they've tried to apply for is not actually what the job role is. So there's a mismatch between what the candidate thought the job was and what the job really is. So employers really need to be, as clear and as detailed as they can on the job description so that people are applying to the jobs that either they're qualified for and that they actually want. I mean, no one wants to waste their time interviewing somebody if it's just not a match. So I think, making sure that you have good, accurate job descriptions or postings is really important from the very beginning. So employers poor communication, that goes back to what we talked about as not having that formal process, not having the follow-up, not communicating with the candidates. All of those things are going to most likely lead to someone ghosting in the process. So it's really important to make sure that you're texting, you're emailing, you're calling, and keeping in contact with those individuals. Because again, they could be interviewing with multiple employers, and if you really want that candidate, you really need to stay on top of that and make sure that you're communicating with them.
I think that's such a good point. In terms of, next steps that they can take, that HR can take to kind of initiate a fast and effective backfilling process, what do you recommend here for HR to kind of more smooth it out a little bit better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's really evaluating their current process of interviewing. I don't know that it's going to be fast per se. I'm sure that there's pieces of it that can be quickly adjusted. Things like making sure there's a formal process, making sure that there's steps in the process that you can actually communicate to the candidates. That might be hard for some organizations that don't have the technology available, but maybe there are dedicated people, or maybe there's a way that you can automate it through the systems that you currently have to be able to make sure that they know that they're still in the process, or that you're delayed, or you need to reschedule because the hiring manager is sick, making sure that there's that communication. But the backfilling piece, again, that's where the employers really need to make sure that they have a pool of candidates and they're looking at different areas. So not just your traditional posting to one website online. And I don't want to say the website, but there's a website that many employers post to, and then that's it. They should really be looking at other sources, untapped talent pools. There are individuals who are undertapped or untapped, like older workers, individuals with disabilities, people who have past incarceration, veterans. There are many people out there that are not sourced and they're great employees. So, looking at some of these organizations and, working with your states Department of Labor, the workforce boards. These are all ways that you can help to source and get candidates, and just continue to have that pool of candidates coming in if you've got positions that regularly turn over, or you have increases in the number of employees or positions that become available.
In terms of communication channels, like making sure those stay open, making sure that managers, HR, everyone across the board is informed, what do you recommend in terms of, how HR can actually establish these communication channels to ensure that supervisors and even, frontline team members are promptly informed of somebody didn't show up or we need somebody to backfill quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, many employers use job requisition forms. So when a position does become available, typically the hiring manager might fill out the job requisition that has all the details of the job, and then HR, recruiting, if they have someone there, would use that information in order to post the job, and then keep that hiring manager informed. Usually, if there's a great need for this person to come on board, the hiring manager is going to go to your recruiter or your HR manager and say, "What's happening? What's the status?" But you don't want that necessarily. So you just have to be proactive in making sure that you're communicating to the hiring manager that you've interviewed X number of people, or you've received X number of resumes, but not everybody is qualified. Just really communicating that to the employer. And that can be done depending on the size of the organization. It could be done via email. It could be done during, through an applicant tracking system, or ATS, as most people know it by, and then the manager can actually see where the recruiter is, or the talent acquisition team is, for hiring those open positions.
Absolutely. And I think a really important topic to discuss here is the aspect of labor laws, aspect of compliance, making sure that, hey, the backfilling process is actually adhering to these labor laws. So my question for you is, how can HR ensure that this backfilling process adheres to labor laws, and what steps should they take to document and handle these situations appropriately?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, when it comes to backfilling, one of the things I would just caution employers on is when they lay someone off or when they terminate someone, the timing of when they rehire that position or post that position can be really important, because somebody who might be laid off and they see their job has now been posted, then they're like, okay, was the layoff a pretext for an involuntary termination for something that might have been discriminatory or retaliatory? That timing of it seems kind of odd, that, Joe got laid off, but then now all of a sudden his position is posted, and, that could potentially be perceived as, some illegal reason why they might have terminated to begin with, and they just used it as a means to let that person go. Same thing if somebody is working and the employer posts the position. That's not illegal. However, you run that chance of that employee seeing that their position is posted online. I just had a friend who had that happen to her recently, where somebody had come to her and said, "Hey, are you leaving? Your position was posted online," and she had no idea. They were actually going to promote her, but they didn't tell her, and they just posted for her position. So it was obviously, I would be very concerned by that. So when you're backfilling positions, just be cautious about the timing of it, whether or not the person is terminated or they voluntarily terminate. Many employers require employees or ask employees to have written resignation letters, so they're not in a situation where someone says they're going to leave and then they decide to change their minds. Employers don't have to rescind the resignation, but it's best to have something in writing. That way, if they've already started to recruit for that position, they don't need to stop in that process. So when it comes to backfilling, like individuals who have been there or their current employees, those are some of the things that you want to think about. And of course, not just with backfilling, but with hiring altogether, you want to make sure that you are complying with the laws. I mean, obviously, you don't want to do anything that could be seen as discrimination based on a protected class, which could be, age or sex, gender, religion. I'm trying to think of the other, all the other ones that are in there, but you don't want to have that in your process. And you want to make sure that if you are using any kind of technology, I know artificial intelligence, there's been, conversations, and I think a law, even in New York City, where you have to make sure that your systems are not inadvertently discriminating against applicants. So those are some of the things to think about when you think about complying with the law and with recruiting individuals. Not necessarily backfilling, but these are things that you need to comply with when you're doing these, the hiring practice or the hiring process.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Another instance, kind of a situation that a lot of HR managers, specifically within shift-based industries, are coming across is new hires not showing up on the first day of work. And that is something that is really prevalent in today's day and age. I think it's really interesting. We actually had a client, Reef Parking, and John, who is, I believe, their HR generalist, HR manager, head of HR. He uses shift bidding a lot because a lot of the times on their busy seasons, because they deal with the summer seasons a lot and they onboard tens of thousands of employees during this busy time, a lot of the times there's many, many employees that don't show up, and it's really unfortunate. And they're newer employees, whatever, they need all this training, all that good stuff. They don't even get through the door at this point. So what they've used is, we have this shift bidding tool on our end where they've actually been able to hand out the shift that the employee never showed up for to their existing staff. Relying on existing staff is huge, right? Making sure that they are compliant, making sure that they have the right credentials in place. They only send out the shift bidding to those who are qualified to work that shift if it requires any sort of certification. So yeah, relying on your existing staff, I think that really goes overlooked a lot of the times, especially when it comes to new employees not showing up on their first day. I think that's super, super prevalent in today's day and age.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And, the shift bidding that you mentioned is great. I mean, obviously you want to be able to have someone to be able to take on those responsibilities. Some people like to have the overtime, the extra hours. So it's great that can be offered to employees. I would just make sure though that you're not burning out your current employees. We saw that during the pandemic where individuals had left employment or they'd been laid off, and then someone else assumed the person's responsibilities, and then they got burned out on it. So you want to be mindful of making sure that your current employees are okay and they're not burned out. But also making sure that you're addressing why people are not showing up for work. And that could be for various reasons. It could be maybe they found a job making more money somewhere else, or it could be that they found better benefits. Look at your employee reviews online. Sometimes you'll be able to assess through Yelp or some other reviews, employee reviews. Glassdoor is one of them. You can see what people are saying. Employee engagement surveys is another way that you can see how the employees feel about the organization. If I'm a candidate and I'm researching an organization that I want to work for, and I see on reviews that employees are like, oh, the leadership is terrible, the benefits are bad, anything like that, I'm going to be hesitant to apply for the job. So I think, really trying to understand what is it that's preventing people from coming in after we've done all of these interviews. And maybe that's even reaching out to them, to those individuals to say, hey, we're sorry that you didn't show up for this interview, or, that you chose not to pursue this job, and see if you can find out why. I don't know that many will tell you, but I think what happens is with ghosting, some people just don't like the confrontation. They don't want to have the difficult conversation. And so they just decide, you know what, I'm just not going to go my first day. And then they'll know, they'll know that I don't want to work there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, the bottom line of the backfilling aspect is making sure that you have a really rich and deep pool of applicants to kind of choose from. Again, I think, as you said, it's really hard to get feedback from employees who have ghosted you because, again, they've ghosted you, they're gone. They're nothing to be seen there. So it's hard to feel like, hey, I can communicate with these guys again. I can actually get some insight from them. When in reality, it's kind of just fine to move on to your next candidate. And hopefully your applicant pool is rich enough that you can have many to choose from. That was a segment from our webinar on how to stop new hires from ghosting you. If you're curious on more videos such as this, click on this video here. If you want to check out more content similar to HR within shift-based industries, go to our channel. We have a ton of more content there, and be sure to subscribe.